My name is Naomi Ellison. I'm 43 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed in friendship the way some people believe in prayer, fiercely, blindly. I met Simone in college. She was the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. Loud laugh, wild curls, always borrowing things and calling it sharing. Over time, she became family. The kind of friend who stood beside me at my wedding, toasted my pregnancy, cried when I bought my first home, or so I thought. We had dinners every week. She knew my schedules, my habits, even which wine I poured when I needed to cry without talking. That's how betrayal works. It needs proximity. And Simone had a front row seat to everything I loved, including Ethan, my husband, my partner of 12 years. I remember the way she hugged him too long at my birthday party once. I laughed it off. I had no reason to doubt her, until I did. It started small. Ethan became busy more often, texting with his screen turned away. Simone stopped asking about us as a couple. She started changing her style, slowly mimicking mine, but always with a twist. She wore the same shade of lipstick I did, bought the same perfume. Once she even dyed her hair the same deep chestnut I'd had for years. I ignored it, until I couldn't. The day I found the message was the day the air in my lungs stopped feeling like mine. A text thread between them. Hidden in a shared cloud account I forgot to unlink from an old iPad. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I just sat there watching message after message, of them flirting, mocking me, sharing things only lovers would. He called her his piece. She called me the anchor he needs to outgrow. There's a rage that doesn't yell. There's a heartbreak that's too full to cry. I remember standing in my living room, surrounded by everything I'd built, realizing it had been quietly stolen, piece by piece, while I smiled at them both. But I didn't tell them, not yet. Because the thing about betrayal is that it gives you clarity, and I saw everything now, every crack, every mask. And I knew this wouldn't end in chaos. It would end in silence. My plan, and her undoing. After that day, I became a ghost inside my own life. I smiled when I needed to, cooked dinners. Ethan didn't deserve, answered Simone's texts like nothing had changed. I wasn't ready for revenge. I was still grieving. Not the loss of a man, but the death of a version of myself that believed loyalty was bulletproof. Every morning, I woke up beside a man whose touch felt foreign. Every weekend, I entertained a friend whose voice now sounded like manipulation, and somehow neither of them noticed the silence growing behind my eyes. It's strange how people think deception makes them smarter. They get lazy, sloppy. Simone started showing up in clothes I once wore. Ethan started complimenting things about me that didn't feel like his words until I realized they were hers. She had studied me so well, she began to wear me like a costume. I realized she didn't just want Ethan, she wanted my life, my essence. She wanted the applause without knowing what it took to write the song. I kept all the evidence, screenshots, emails, timestamps. I kept my tone warm and my eyes sharp. I watched as they laughed too hard at things that weren't funny. I studied their patterns, where they met, when they disappeared. And all the while I pretended to crumble slowly, just enough to keep their guard down. Because nothing frightens a betrayer more than the betrayed who says nothing. But alone. In quiet moments, I broke. I questioned myself. How did I not see this? Was I not enough? Was I too trusting? Too open? I blamed my heart for being too soft. I blamed my eyes for being too blind. But then I remembered, kindness is not stupidity, and betrayal is not your fault. Just because you trusted the wrong person. I started going back to the gym. Not to impress Ethan, not to compete with Simone, but to feel myself again. I started journaling, mapping not just the pain but the plan. I saw clearly now revenge wouldn't be about hurting them back. It would be about erasing them from the life they tried to steal. Quietly, completely. They thought they had taken everything from me. But what they didn't realize was that I was still the architect of my own world, and I was just beginning to redesign it without their fingerprints anywhere near the foundation. I stopped reacting. That was the first real shift. No more suspicious looks. No more questions, just quiet observation. The more silent I became, the more open they grew. Simone started bragging about new job opportunities, hinting that she was finally stepping into her destiny. I smiled and asked polite questions. Ethan spoke less and less at home, perhaps out of guilt, or maybe he thought I was too dull to notice. Either way, they were both underestimating me, and that was their first mistake. What neither of them remembered was that I had built the network they were now trying to use. Every job Simone ever got, every connection she bragged about, had somehow once passed through me. She'd used my name, my recommendations, my circle, and I had receipts. I started quietly calling in favors, asking former colleagues if they'd heard from her, planting seeds, mentioning things about ethics, letting her pattern catch up with her on its own. You see, I didn't have to burn her down, I just had to remove my hand from holding her up. At home, I began the quiet withdrawal. I took over the finances again, citing budget tightening. Ethan barely noticed. I paid down our mortgage, split our accounts, transferred title ownership of anything in my name to a protected trust. I met with a lawyer twice a week under the guise of helping a friend through probate. They didn't even ask. That's how invisible I had become to them. And that invisibility became my superpower. I knew Simone would overplay her hand eventually. She always did. The thirst for validation made her impulsive. She applied for a director-level role at a firm run by a woman who once mentored me. The moment I heard about the interview, I made one phone call. I didn't lie. I simply forwarded a PDF with Simone's resume and highlighted all the exaggerations I knew personally weren't true. I let her own dishonesty speak for itself. The silence on their end was all the confirmation I needed. And Ethan, he began to unravel slowly. He lost a small client account and started blaming everyone but himself. His tension was palpable, his affection more forced than ever. I knew he felt the cracks forming, but he didn't know where they came from. That's the beauty of quiet revenge. It feels like life is simply shifting on its own, like karma came early and no one ever sees your fingerprints. While they were busy pretending to bloom, I was building something permanent, something that wouldn't just make them regret what they'd done, but make them wish they had never underestimated the woman who used to pour their wine and smile too kindly. I wasn't just rebuilding. I was reclaiming, strategically, one silent move at a time. It started with small fractures, barely visible at first. Simone didn't get the job she told everyone she was a shoo-in for. She blamed office politics, but I saw the panic behind her smile. Ethan's quarterly review came back underwhelming, and he started working late again, but this time not with passion, just desperation. They were both still trying to perform like nothing was wrong, but the stage was cracking beneath them, and I had already pulled the spotlight. I continued to play my role, but with quiet distance. I stopped asking where he was going, stopped texting when he was late. That absence of concern started to eat at him more than any argument could have. You see, anger makes people feel important, but indifference, that makes them invisible. And when someone who betrayed you starts to feel like they don't matter, that's when they really begin to unravel. Simone tried to circle back emotionally, suggesting we have a girls' day again, like old times. She even sent me a necklace she claimed reminded her of our bond. I almost laughed. She still didn't know I'd seen the messages. Still thought she was playing a secret game, but I didn't respond. I simply mailed it back. No note, no message, just silence. That silence was the loudest thing I'd ever sent her. Then came the legal notice. I filed for divorce quietly, through the trust, with every financial document already in place. Ethan was served at his office. He didn't even have time to prepare a lie. When he came home, I was already gone for the weekend, staying at a spa retreat I'd prepaid 6 months prior. I didn't answer his calls. I didn't return for 4 days. When I did, he was pale, shaken for the first time in years. I think he realized he no longer had access to me. What they both failed to grasp was that I was never trying to make them suffer. I just wanted them to feel the weight of their own choices without me softening the blow. The woman they tried to play had already rewritten the script, and they were stuck on a stage where no one applauded anymore. I wasn't done, but I was almost free, and freedom, when earned, doesn't feel like escape. It feels like arrival. Simone's social media went quiet first. No more vacation posts. No more inspirational quotes, just a slow fade. A mutual friend told me she lost another job opportunity due to references not checking out. Ethan's credit card was declined, trying to buy a gift for her. I know because the account was still partially tied to mine and I had already capped it. Slowly, the life they were building on borrowed energy began to dry up. Ethan came to the house one night, unannounced. He didn't knock at first, just stood outside, pacing. I watched through the blinds. This was a man who once told me I was too emotional. Now he stood there, breathing like he couldn't find air. When he finally knocked, I opened the door just enough to hand him a sealed envelope. It contained nothing more than the finalized terms. I didn't say a word, and that silence again crushed more than any scream ever could. Simone sent one last message. You win. That was it. 3 words. But what she didn't realize was I wasn't playing a game. I had stopped playing the moment I saw who she really was. My win wasn't her loss. My win was the rediscovery of my worth, my vision, and my peace. She wanted to steal a man. I reclaimed myself. I sold the house and moved into a penthouse condo overlooking the city. Not for show, for space, for air, for light. I changed my number. I updated my name legally to include my mother's maiden name, an old promise I'd made to honor her strength. And with every shift I left behind the shadows they once tried to keep me in. I no longer check what they're doing. I don't ask about their lives, because once you build a life you're proud of, you stop trying to prove anything to people who tried to erase you. I created a world where their names don't echo, where their absence is not felt. Only their memory is a distant, irrelevant blur. And I did it all without raising my voice. I let the truth speak. I let time handle the justice. And I stood back, not as a victim, but as the quiet architect of my own redemption. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in pieces, like sunlight cracking through blinds after too many dark mornings. At first, I still flinched at the sound of my phone, expecting more apologies or passive-aggressive questions. But eventually, the silence stopped feeling like waiting. It became peace. Not because the pain disappeared, but because I had outgrown the version of myself that needed answers from people who never deserved the right to question me in the first place. I started taking walks at sunrise. It became my ritual feet hitting the pavement before the world asked anything of me. One morning I walked past a little coffee shop and saw a woman laughing with a friend. I didn't know her, but for a split second I remembered myself how I used to laugh like that before all of it, and just as quickly I realized I laugh like that again now, just differently, softer, not for show, not to keep anyone, just for me. Ethan eventually left town. I never followed where. Simone faded from the few mutual circles we had left. She no longer had access to the world she borrowed through me. And I didn't need revenge anymore because what I gained was so much louder than anything I lost. I rebuilt my business slowly, without fanfare. I consulted for companies that respected experience, that didn't ask how old I was, only what wisdom I carried. I look in the mirror now and see the woman they underestimated, and I thank God they did. Because if they hadn't tried to break me, I might have never discovered how indestructible I really was. I used to think forgiveness was about letting people back in. It's not, it's about freeing yourself from the weight of remembering their lies, and I forgave them not for their sake, but for mine. Sometimes people will betray you with smiles on their faces. Sometimes the knife in your back will have a familiar fingerprint. But here's what I know now: when they hand you the blade, you don't need to stab back. You just build a throne with the steel and sit there in silence while they realize they lost access to royalty. My name is Naomi Ellison, and I didn't take revenge. I reclaimed my crown, quietly, fully, and forever.